Hey everybody, good afternoon. This is Coach James. You guys are in the right place. It's the right time. It's 1 o'clock Eastern time and it is Wednesday, which means it is time for Real Training Live, guys. So I'm excited as always to come to you with a brand new episode today. We got some great things that we're going to talk about. We need to look at. I just need to do one thing as always. I got to make sure we are live here on my monitor so I can actually see you guys when you ask the questions and you make the comments. So, hey, do me a favor. If you are watching live, comment below and just put a big L, and no, that doesn't stand for loser, that stands for live. If you're watching it as a rebroadcast, which is totally cool, just go ahead down below and put an R for rebroadcast, all right? That way I kind of get a feel for just how many of you are able to join with me live every single week. So, one thing, I've said this so many times, guys, and give me 1 second here while I scroll down. But I have said this so many times over the last several months, the last several years, and that is when I show up and when we have these types of opportunities to come together and to take a look at your business, take a look at tactics and things that are going to help you grow, I've got two purposes, okay? There's two things that I'm looking at and I want to impart to you guys. Number one is information. All right, no doubt about it, guys. I am looking to give you information. I'm looking to give you scripts. I'm looking to give you tools and insight and knowledge and ideas that I know are going to make a difference. Okay, and the second thing that I'm looking to do is to give you guys the motivation, give you the encouragement, give you the kick in the backside if that's what you need to get out there and take action. Because, guys, you know this as well as I do. And give me 1 second here. For some reason, this is not loading. And I can't actually see the post at the moment, so I'm not sure why that is. Let me just refresh one more time. But guys, you guys know this, that knowledge by itself, okay, knowledge by itself is not power. I know that is a phrase that has been around for a long time. Knowledge equals power. But you know, I realized several years ago that by itself, man, that's not true. Having a lot of knowledge doesn't necessarily give you power unless you do something with it. So my encouragement for you as you're watching this right now, and please hit the likes, hit the thumbs up, hit the share button right now and get this sent out to as many other agents as you know so we can draw them in. But my encouragement is you got to figure out what you're going to take away from today's conversation that you are actually going to implement, okay? So, great to have you on board with us, Marie. As always, from New Jersey. Emily, it looks like you are live with us as well from Kansas City area, so appreciate you being with us too. And again, guys, I don't understand here. I'm not sure why I can't actually see my page or my post at the moment. It says I'm live, but I don't see myself. So, you know, you gotta love technology. Technology is always great when it works. But there we go. I can actually see it now. So we're good to go. So, two things, knowledge and decision time to take action. So here's what I want to look at today. We are in middle of October, which means we are in the middle of the first month of the fourth quarter, guys. We have literally about 30 days left in 2018 for you to put transactions together, put them under contract, put them into escrow so you can get paid. All right. On average, we're looking at about 45 days to get those things closed. So that means November 15th is sort of that little arbitrary cutoff that we say, hey, you know what? From this point on, anything you sell is probably going to pay you in 2019. All right. So that means we got 30 days left and we need to make every single one of those days count. All right. So what I want to talk about today are the standards that you have or maybe you don't have when it comes to finding the future leads, the people that you plan to do business with or people you want to do business with. All right. So I want you to think about something. I have said this to agents for the better part of the last 15 or 20 years. And I don't know that I exactly invented this little phrase, but I can't say I've heard too many other people say it. All right. But what I have got to share with you is that the agents who don't prospect or don't prospect enough or they don't prospect effectively, okay? So if you're an agent who really doesn't prospect at all or do any form of lead gen, if you're an agent who just doesn't lead generate enough to hit your goals or you do it in an ineffective way, here's the challenge, guys. You as that agent will not be able to have standards. Okay, you can't afford to have standards if you're not lead generating enough, or you're not doing it in an effective way. So here's my appeal to you. And the question is, do you want to raise the standard in your business? And if the answer for you is yes, hit yes below if you would, okay? And hey, Chad Burrows from Pennsylvania, great to see you jumping on with us live. Appreciate you as always. Hit the share button for me if you would, man. Get this out to some of those other agents that I know are in Mindy's office there and that you know need to be a part of this, all right? So, but here's again, let me just say what I said again. If you don't prospect enough, or you don't prospect effectively, you're going to be in a situation, guys, where you can't afford to have standards. Okay, simple as that. So if you are one of those agents, and I'm assuming because you're showing up on an event like this, I'm assuming you probably want to raise the bar. You want to raise your standards a little bit in terms of the sellers and buyers you work with. Then you have to decide, do I have to get going? And when it comes to lead generating, do I have to simply get off the couch or get out of my chair and start getting to work? Or do I need to do it more? Okay, maybe you're showing up, and I've used the analogy over the years, guys, of somebody who wants to get in shape, right? Somebody who wants to work out and maybe lose weight or improve their muscle mass, and they say, you know what? I've never really done any form of exercise. I've never gone to the gym, so I'm going to go 2 days a week for about 15, 20 minutes each. Okay, now I want you to think about that. You show up at the gym, you don't even break a sweat, you do it twice a week, and you go home and you think to yourself, well, there, I did it. I went to the gym. I worked out. Now, I've probably used this analogy with some of you before, but first of all, we know one thing. That is absolutely better than staying on the couch, right, guys? It's better than doing nothing at all. But let's be honest. How in shape are you going to get? How much improvement are you going to see in terms of your weight or your muscle mass or anything else if you show up twice a week for 15 minutes? And there's a lot of agents that are like that. When it comes to their prospecting, they'll prospect a few days a week. They might even prospect 4 or 5 days a week, but they talk to 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 people. I was just talking to a client yesterday, and we were kind of getting down to the nitty gritty, right? And I said to him, now let me ask you a question. And he had not been updating his numbers analyzer. Shame on him. He had not been updating it for the last month or two, and I've been harassing him and saying, come on, man, you got to get this into me. So finally yesterday I said to him, look, I want you to be honest. How many new people per day do you think you are averaging talking to over the last couple of months? Now, there was probably about 15 to 20 seconds of silence on the other end of the phone after I asked him that question, right? And I could tell he was uncomfortable, but you know what? That's my job as his coach and as your coach if I'm coaching you. Sometimes I got to make you uncomfortable because that's how we grow. So there was silence on the other end of the phone, and I could tell he was thinking about it, and I knew he wanted to give me an honest answer. And the volume and the tone of his voice had dropped a little bit, and he said, well, it's probably about 5 or 6 a day. And I said, 5 or 6 a day? I said to him, man, you and I both know that is nowhere even close. I said, at the very minimum, you got to double that. Absolutely, at the very minimum, you got to double that, starting today. And he knew it, and I, of course, knew it. And I said to him, look, you're just not talking to enough people. How long is it going to take you to find a serious, motivated buyer or seller if you're only talking to 5 people a day? Okay? Now, again, is it better than doing nothing? Absolutely. Okay? Can you build a business talking to 5 people a day? Well, sure, you can find business. It's going to take a while, and you're not going to find very much, but you can find something. So here's the deal. For some of you, you may have to prospect, period. You may have to get going with some form of lead gen. For a lot of you, it's probably going to be you got to prospect a little bit more. Okay? And then the other part of it is you've got to be more effective. Okay? You've got to ask better questions. You have to bring more energy and enthusiasm to the call. Just today, I was listening to several recordings from one of my other coaching clients. Okay? He had sent me probably half a dozen, maybe a dozen recordings of prospecting calls that he had done in the last couple of days. And I didn't have time to get through all of them, but I listened to several of them. And one of the first things I wrote down is you've got to have more energy. You've got to amp it up when these people pick up the phone because energy and enthusiasm attracts. Okay? It gets people engaged. It causes them to want to listen. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to like what you have to say. It doesn't mean, that they're going to be a motivated lead, but they'll listen and they'll have a much better chance of responding. So for some of you, there are ways that you need to be more effective. But here's where this is all going. Let's remember what we started the conversation with today, guys. Standards. If you aren't doing those things, you can't afford to have standards. Now, what are we talking about, right? You're thinking, well, James, what do you mean by standards? Well, let's look at a few different areas, okay, of what might make up a great lead, a great person that you want to pursue and you're going to put in your follow-up system. Number one, they got to have motivation. But see, if you can't afford to have standards, if you're only prospecting sporadically or you're not really very good at it, anybody who's breathing might qualify to have enough motivation to be in your follow-up system. Okay? Somebody that says to you, well, we've thought about it, okay? Maybe if, by the time next year rolls around and this happens and that happens and the moons are all in alignment and we have another solar eclipse and, this and that happen, then maybe we'll consider buying or selling. And you're thinking, okay, good enough for me, and I put them into my follow-up system. No, man, that is not the kind of standard that I certainly expect you guys to have. So you got to ask yourself, what level of motivation, okay? What level of motivation does a person have to get into your follow-up system? Okay? What do they have to tell you to get into the follow-up system? All right? Do they have to be doing a little more than breathing? Does it have to be a little bit more than, well, I've thought about it? I would hope so. All right? So they have to have a defined reason. Now, as you prospect and you go out into the world, whether it's on the phone or you go knocking on doors or you do whatever to lead generate, you're going to find a lot of people who are thinking about selling or thinking about buying. Okay, you guys have seen this before. There's lots of people that are in that mode of, well, I've considered it. But see, if that's not good enough, then we got to go to the next level. What's the next level? Well, the next level is, well, yes, not only have we been thinking about it, but we are planning on buying or selling a property. Okay? That's better. That's a step in the right direction, right, guys? That gets you thinking, okay, now I've got somebody that I might be able to work with. But then let's go to the next level and say, not only are they planning on doing it, but they have a definite reason why they need to do it. Okay, maybe it's a job transfer. Maybe the house is too small. They've just had another child, or they've had twins, and the house just doesn't work anymore. Maybe they've gotten a job that is a lot further away. Maybe they're tired of the neighborhood. Maybe it's too big. Maybe all their children have left. I don't know what the reason is, guys, but that's your job. Your job is to figure out why is it so important that they get this home sold or purchase a home. But see, there again, that's going to require prospecting. It's going to require prospecting more to find the people, and it's going to require prospecting effectively. All right? So I want you to think about something. If you were to look at the total number of households in the market that you cover, okay? And I know for a lot of you that are on the line right now that we've had these kinds of conversations in the past. Okay? And again, if you're just joining, go ahead and hit live in the comments below. If you are watching this as a rebroadcast, hit the letter R, put the letter R in the comments for me if you would. And please be sure to keep the likes and the shares going. And thank you guys for doing that. But I've asked this question before of some of you, and that is I want you to think about how many households are in the marketplace that you cover. All right? Now, I'm not talking population. I'm talking about households, generally speaking, single family, residential, homes, townhouses, condos, things like that, okay? If you think about the number of households, okay, and then you look at the number of properties that are for sale right now, okay, or you look at the number of properties that have sold in the last 30 days, the last 60 days, and you take that on a monthly basis and you start to look at the percentage. What I have always found every time I've done this or every time I've asked agents to do it is that it's somewhere between 1, maybe 1.5% to 2% of the population is actually not just thinking about selling, but they're in the act of doing something about it. They've listed their home, okay, or they've just purchased a home. So that means that if you want, so you got to figure out what the number is, okay? Again, maybe it's 10,000, maybe it's 100,000. I don't know how many households are in the area that you cover. But you take 1, maybe 1.5% of that, and that tells you how many people you have to talk to find the person who's actually going to do something in the next 30 days, in the next 60 days. So guys, you're starting to see, it's a lot of people. Okay, now I don't say that to discourage you. I don't say that to overwhelm you. I don't say that to, be a downer, but I just want you to understand the reality. That if you want to have higher standards, you have to elevate those 3 things we talked about. Right? You got to get into motion every day because that's your job. Your job is to find those people in your marketplace who need to sell, right? Or need to buy a property. That's number 1. Number 2 is you may have to do it more. And number 3 is you have to look at how do you get more effective at drawing those people to you as you engage them on the phone or at the door. Okay? So let's go back to what I was saying a few minutes ago. Motivation. The other thing, the other standard that you have to be looking for, or one of the other standards that they need to meet, is a realistic view of the market. Okay? You are looking for people that have a realistic view of the market. Not the view of the market that they hope it had, that they want it to have, or they hope it has. You're not looking for people who say, well, I need to get a certain amount of money for my house, right? Or I believe that my home, my property is worth a certain amount of money. You are looking for the people who are saying to you basically, look, I need to sell. Okay, I have a defined reason why I have to sell my home. I'm willing to accept what the market is willing to pay. Okay, that's a standard. Because there are lots of people out there who will say to you, sure, you can come list my house. Be happy to list it with you. I need to get X amount of dollars for the property though. I'm not going to take a penny less. So as long as you can get me this amount of money, sure, you can have the listing. Now, there are a lot of agents who have that philosophy. You look at the quality of their inventory and you can see what their standards are. They have terrible standards. They have no standards. It doesn't take anything to become one of their sellers because they'll take anything. And why do they take anything, guys? Because they don't have a choice. Okay? They don't have enough options. That's one of the beauties of lead generating on a regular basis is it gives you choices and options. You can say no. You can say, no, I'm not going to list that property. You're asking way too much. You're too unrealistic. Same thing on the buyer side, guys, by the way. Okay, you've got a lot of buyers out there who would be happy to purchase a property if they can get it for 50 cents on the dollar or 60 cents on the dollar. Okay, and they're willing to make lowball offer after lowball offer and just waiting for that person who's desperate enough to take it. And they're more than happy to use up a lot of your time schlepping them all over the marketplace, showing them those properties, writing up the offers, calling the other agents and aggravating the heck out of them because you're giving them such terrible offers. They'll waste all the time in the world because they don't care. They just want the deal. It's not even a deal. They want the steal. That's a low standard. If you're looking at buyers, you need to have buyers that have to buy and they're willing to pay fair market value for property. And of course, they're financially qualified. Okay, so again, when we look at standards, guys, you have to define for yourself what does it take to become a good lead in your system? What level of motivation do they have? What level of realism do they have to have about the market and the market conditions? Okay, and then of course the other standard is that they have to be willing to pay you what you're worth. All right, because how many times do you get the person who says to you, look, yeah, you can come list my house, but I'm only willing to pay you 3%. Total, right? You know, and yes, I know you got to pay at least 2.5 to the buyer's agent, so you better work for half a point, right? There's lots of people out there. That is what they're willing to do. And there's lots of agents, unfortunately, because they're desperate, because they can't afford to have standards, they take those listings. Sometimes maybe one of you watching has taken a listing like that because you were in a place that you probably shouldn't have been in, meaning you had no other choices and you needed a listing. Okay, I don't want you to be in that position. So therefore, you've got to prospect more, or you have to prospect more effectively. And if you'll do those three things, guys, if you will be consistent at a higher level and in a more effective way, you can effectively raise the standard. Okay, now, let me give you an example of the other end of the spectrum, okay? The far end of the spectrum when it comes to standards. And for any of you who have watched these episodes over the last couple of years, or you've been involved in my coaching, you've probably heard me share this story with you, okay? But here is the story, and some of you may have heard about this. It's a guy named Froy Candelario, all right? Now, this guy was selling real estate. He was in his peak back in the 80s and early 90s, okay? That's the time frame we're talking about. Now, he is still in the business. In fact, I think he owns a lending company out in the LA area at this point. But back in the mid to late 80s and early 90s, this guy he was literally making close to $3 million a year in commission, okay? In 1985, all right? So think about like today's money, that would be like double that, okay? So he was a massive megastar when it comes to real estate sales. And here's the deal. Every day, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, if you wanted to list your home, you had to show up at his office. And he had a series of 10 booths lined up in his office. So if you wanted to sell, you showed up at his office at 5 o'clock or a little before. Some of his staff would come along and they would hand you a listing contract. They would hand you a set of comps. And basically you waited your turn for Froy to come along, meet with you for just a couple minutes in your booth, And here are the standards that you would have to agree to if you wanted Freud to list your property. You ready? Okay. You had to list at or below market value. There was going to be no advertising of your property. You weren't going to hear from Freud at all until he had an offer on your property. Okay? So there's no communication. And basically, you just entrusted him with the listing, and that was it. And he would tell you when he had an offer. Now, what I can say is that out of 10 people a day that he would present to, he might have 1 or 2 that would choose to list with him based on those standards. Okay? And if you wanted to buy a house, you would show up at 6 o'clock. And he had 2 of these large vans that he had converted, and he would put 4, 5, 6 buyers a day into these 2 vans, and him and one other buyer's agent would drive them around the marketplace. Okay? Now, because of how he would list these properties, they were all listed at or below market value, and he was listing anywhere from 40 to 60 properties a month. Okay? 40 to 60 a month. Priced at or below market value. Guess which listings so many of his buyers bought because they were the best priced in the market. They were his listings. So he was double ending probably 80 to 85% of the listings he took. All right? That's why he was making $3 million a year. But the question is, how in the world did he get 10 people a day to show up on average to talk about listing their home? And remember, the reality is he didn't care that only 2 out of 10 listed with him. That was fine because that was his standard. If you didn't want to price it the way he wanted to price, forget it. There's the door. If you wanted communication, if you wanted service, if you wanted advertising and marketing, forget it. But the point is, he would door knock 6 to 8 hours a day, every day, 5 to 6 days a week. Okay? That's how he was able to find that much business. Okay, he was out at the doors at 8 to 8:30 every morning. He took a 15 to 20 minute lunch break, and he wasn't done until 4 o'clock. And he gave himself from 4 to 5 to relax, grab a bite to eat, change his clothes if need be, and be ready to start talking to these people at 5. Okay? Now that's what he was willing to do. So the question is, well, I'm not going to ask the question because I'm sure none of you would say yes. But the thing is, if you could imagine yourself doing that, imagine the kind of standards that you could have. And you can see as an example. Now, like I said, that's the extreme. I really don't know very many other agents in the history of real estate that have ever done quite that a level of effort. Okay? But you can see what it led to because he was willing to talk to anywhere from 60 to 80 people a day, which is what he averaged. Okay? So, point being, the more you're willing to do and the more effective you're willing to become at it, you can ask for whatever you want. You can ask for your price or the highway. You can ask for 7% if you want on the listings. You can tell them, hey, I'm not spending money on advertising. But, and you'll have enough business, by the way, to do that. But if you are at the other end of the spectrum, if you rarely prospect, if you show up most every day, but you really don't do much, okay? Or if you just never bother to get better at what you do, guess what, guys? No standards. And therefore, you're going to have to take whatever comes along. Whatever they want to pay you, whatever price they want to list it at, you're going to have to give in. So I guess I'm saying this, and I wanted to talk about this today because, again, we have 30 days. Guys, we have 30 days left to find business you can get paid on in 2018. So what kind of a standard are you going to have? Who are you looking for? Are you clear up here about the kind of prospect that it's going to take to be able to, and by the way, if they're a listing, you've got to have them listed in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Okay? Any listing you want to sell and get paid on this year probably has to be on the market in the next 2, maybe 3 weeks. Okay? So my point is there's not a lot of time. There needs to be a higher level of urgency to find these people. So my suggestion is this. Why not pick at least 1 day a week to do an ultimate prospecting day? Okay? 1 day where you just go flat out like Freud Candelario used to do, and you spend 6, 7, maybe 8 hours in lead generation and hot lead follow-up. Are you willing to do that, guys? If it meant an additional 2, 3, or more paychecks this year, okay? Let's say your average commission is $7,000 and you could get 3 more sales added to what you already have, that's an extra 20 grand, okay? This year. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to take a day a week and just go flat out like that for 6 or 8 hours? You have to decide that. Now, you may be in a smaller market where you're thinking, my gosh, I could talk to everybody in my town in 6 hours. Hey, good, go talk to them all. And ask them who they know that's looking to sell or buy, and do they have any plans themselves? Okay? And the good news is, guys, look, the offshoot of this is you may find a lot of people that genuinely aren't going to do anything until next year. So what? You're going to be in business next year, right? You're going to be looking for listings in January, am I right? February, March? Guess what? It's okay. I'm just saying to you, let's raise the bar on what you're willing to do, because the standards you're looking for need to come up in some cases. And again, this is the same thing on the buying side, right? It doesn't matter if they want or they're thinking of buying or they're considering buying. You need the ones who have to buy. And they're out there, okay? We know they're out there. So if you have questions about this, if you have scenarios that are going on in your business that I'm speaking to right now, make sure you make a comment, ask a question, hit me up with something, even if it isn't today, right? If you're watching this as a rebroadcast tomorrow or the next day, put your comment, put your question below and send it to me. Because I want to see all of you really kill it in the next 30 days so you can have a great finish to the year and you can start 2019 with a strong pool of potential buyers and sellers who actually have to do something, that are at the highest standard possible, the highest level of motivation, the most level of qualification, the most serious, and willing to pay you what you're worth. That to me is a high quality buyer or seller. But the challenge is you got to talk to enough people to find them. And they're not going to come show up knocking on your door. They're not going to fall in your lap. You have to go find them. You have to be willing to do the work, guys, okay? So, like I said, if you have questions, if you have comments, please post them below. Make sure, if you haven't already done it, which I know a lot of you have, please be sure to hit the share button. Send me the likes, send me the, the recommendations if you're looking to get into coaching, okay? If this is something you're thinking about either for the end of this year or the start of 2019, I need to know about that, right? So we can talk about what it would take to get into my schedule, all right? So, guys, it's almost 1:30. So we've spent a good 30 minutes looking at this. I've given you the information. I've given you the encouragement. You have a decision to make right now. You guys need to make the decision that you're going to do something with what we've just covered, all right? So that burden is on you. My encouragement, my hope is that you're going to get out there and make today count, all right? So it's Coach James. Be back here again next Wednesday, 1 o'clock Eastern time for Real Training Live. Have a great rest of your day, guys.